Hello, everyone, and welcome in. My name is Bryce Koon. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday evening if you're watching live. If you are, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're talking Georgia Tech defense. Can Tyler Santucci transform one of the country's worst last year into better? Maybe not one of the best, but better. We'll talk about it tonight on this episode of Swarm Talk. Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Before we get started, a disclaimer. Ralph's in the background. My name is Bryce Koon. Thanks so much. Will is in the doldrums somewhere talking about Auburn football to himself. I do want to give a shout out before we get out of here. And it is a hashtag, not an ad yet, but we're going to push so hard they're going to give us an ad. And this is Yasso Bars. Justin Klingel, when you watch this or listen to this, you know exactly what I'm checking and I'm talking about here. Check out Yasso Bars. These Greek yogurt frozen bars, amazing. Ralph gets the ones with a little bit of crunch. I prefer the ones a little more silky smooth in my Greek yogurt. But hey, it is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. You need to check it out. I just had one actually, chocolate chip cookie dough. It's amazing. It's amazing, and I can't wait. Can't wait for them to see this. We're going to push so hard for. We might even start running the ads completely unpaid, so that they will. They'll give it to us. Ralph says Yasso Bars for the win. We appreciate it. Hey, if you're watching live here on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit like, and we would love to have you join the community. If you're watching this after the fact, still like the page, subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know some comments down below. We will go live talking Georgia Tech every single Tuesday evening during the off season. Make sure to stay tuned with the schedule that we have every Monday talking college football, Tuesday talking Georgia Tech, and then some pre-recorded episodes sprinkled in throughout the rest of the week. Ralph Leary's in the background, and we also appreciate you, by the way, if you're listening on podcast form, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Tonight, we're talking defense. Tyler Santucci. We talked about this about a month ago when he was hired and what I thought he brought to the table. I've mentioned this in the Discord, a great opportunity for you to join and jump into the Discord if you would like to engage in some banter, some conversation, some SMU Pony Express talk if you want. That's a joke, but we have found some really cool SMU gear. And listen, I will tell you this, SMU, friends of the program. We can say that, right, Ralph? The SMU football program is now friends of our program and our show. So that's what we like to see, growing the fan base. Let's talk Tyler Santucci tonight. Look, I think that there's some key aspects that can be fixed for a unit that was really, really bad. Among one of the, and Ralph does hit it there with the pony up, I love it, among one of the nation's worst. A bad run defense, we all watched it. There's, not really, in my opinion, too much to really get into here when you talk about what Georgia Tech defensively had on the table. We're talking more about today, what can Tyler Santucci do to help? I'm going to get into some points. I've only put one in the system, so Ralph's going to have to type these up on the fly as he steps away. But the first one we're going to roll with this evening is overall improving linebacker play. Now let's set the stage here of what Georgia Tech has coming into the 2024 season. I would first off like to say you have a guy that is an ACC level starter and can provide some great snaps for you. High energy guy. He's going to play with 110% effort. Exactly what Brent Key and this Georgia Tech program wants to have in Kyle Eifert. You have that. Kyle Eifert should be the starter as of right now. Like, that's the guy that should be starting for you going forward unless he gets beat out in spring ball or anything like that. He proved what he needed to over the course of last season, that he understands it. He's going to grow and learn. A good athlete out there, a thumper. Look, he wears the extended neck pad. How can you not be a fan of what 44 and gold and white does for you? You enter in some young guys. I'm really, and I'll say this too, I'm super excited to see what E.J. Lightsey, the former Georgia transfer, is going to bring to the table. I think this is a guy, and I'll tell you this, that what Georgia Tech was really in on at the high school ranks, just wasn't able to see the field during his time in Athens, makes his way over to Atlanta now, and I think that this has the potential to be really, really fun to watch, folks. Really fun to watch with what they want to do. So If you pair those two guys, look, we can go down the list of a lot of other guys, Jacob Cruz, Nakari Ashley, just a lot of different faces that could make and pay dividends for this defense. But if you want to feel better, because I will say this, the reason sometimes the secondary looked so bad and looked so rough, especially in the run game, and a reason that they arguably were some of the top tacklers on the team was because of a lack of consistent play in the front seven. So what does that mean? Where did you go from that? Okay, well, you bring in a guy in Tyler Santucci who entered 2023 with Duke in a similar situation that Georgia Tech's going to walk into in terms of unproven or not necessarily guys at the linebacker position that you say, hey, those guys can play, 60, 70 snaps a game, and I'm not going to worry about it. Santucci entered 2023 with a linebacker position that was among the most inexperienced, not only at Duke, but in the conference. He had to replace all ACC selection Shaka Hayward, but you saw kind of what they were able to, move and do. And Luke, I do like Jackson Hamilton, by the way. I like that player as well. Interchangeable piece there in the middle of your defense. You saw Trey Freeman, redshirt sophomore linebacker for Duke this past season. Go look him up. He led the team in tackles. He ranked 6th in the ACC with around 8, averaging around 8 tackles per game, finished with 71 on the year. He led Duke, and this is the key part of this. Your linebacker, as they should, because if your defense is flowing and doing everything they need to do, your defensive front, I'll say your defensive line, is clogging up holes. They're clogging up running lanes, and they're allowing your linebackers to freely move and make plays aggressively. Your linebacker for Duke this past season, Trey Freeman, he led the team in tackles in against number 9 Clemson at the time, number 11 Notre Dame, receiving votes NC State and Wake Forest. Over the last 5 games of the season, he averaged over 10 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and he had half a sack and interception. What I'm saying here is if you kind of go back and look at some of the big moments of the season for Georgia Tech, yes, guys like Paul Mullen, those guys made plays, but the consistency throughout a full 60 minutes wasn't necessarily there. And I think having a guy in Santucci who understands, look, Trey Freeman, talented young man, but unlocking him is going to have a great front that allows these guys to make plays aggressively, allows them to understand the scheme that they're in, and therefore being able to play and move freely. I think it's going to pay massive dividends, and just having an identity as a defense where your linebackers can get back to being the focal point of what you want to do in the run game. They were there with guys like Ace Ely and Charlie Thomas. Georgia Tech got away from that, a revolving door. And that's not an indictment on Georgia Tech necessarily. The transfers you brought in did not hit. The guys that you thought might be contributors, it just didn't work out. So now you roll into this season, and you need that. That's one of the things Santucci improved so much at Duke with that defense. And I think it's massive to sit here and talk about. Georgia Tech needs that in 2024. We're going to get to the defensive line. But as a group where you're going to be relying on, a couple key transfers to hit, but really a development from these guys that have taken, maybe a step or two into your program, whether it's a freshman entering a sophomore season or a second-year player entering a pivotal third season, you're now entering this kind of room, and you're entering this spot where you really kind of have to have some of these guys have a make or break. They've got to develop. Either you develop and you're going to play here for us, or you're going to move on and play elsewhere. That's why I'm really, really excited to kind of see what transpires and what happens with Tyler Santucci and the evolution of this defense. I mentioned Trey Freeman and what he was able to do there. Freeman spoke on Santucci and the development all from fall camp. He said he's a great coach and even better person. He cares about his players and the relationship he builds with them. He has helped me understand how to play linebacker at a high level and how to move the most efficient way while playing the position. That quote right there, ladies and gentlemen, if you tuned in to our film review, which I believe, Ralph, it was the Bowling Green game that we got demonetized like 47 times for on 65 different platforms. If you go back and you kind of look at what transpired essentially in that football game, yes, there were some big plays made this season by the linebackers. Yes, you were able to take advantage of turnovers. But this quote from Trey Freeman sticks out to me the most. How to move the most efficient way while playing the position. You don't want wasted movement. In today's day and age of high octane offenses and some of the offenses that Georgia Tech's going to face, you can't afford to have wasted movement at the linebacker position. You need those quick twitch, those fast guys that can make decisions on the fly and be comfortable and confident in what they're doing on the football field. So that being said, if you're able to get that out of a guy like Trey Freeman, who's a talented player in his own right, that has to excite you from a linebacker position of where Georgia Tech's going to roll in here in 2024. If you can get one or two of these guys, if you can get an EJ Lightsey, if you can get a Kyle Leaford to play at a more efficient level, to play limited mistakes, no wasted movement in the way they go about playing the position with a combination of confidence, aggression, and smarts, you're talking about a high-level elite linebacking core. That's where Georgia Tech wants to get under Santucci. So I think that's one thing that you're really, really excited to see as you kind of look back at some of the numbers of what he was able to do there. Now, I wanted to enter this into because when you go back and look at this 2023 version of Duke, obviously Santucci was a Broyles Award contender there. That's a massive pickup if you're talking about Georgia Tech just bringing a guy like that. These are some crazy bullet points I've got here. His first 4 wins of the season were won by 20-plus points, and in 3 of those opening 4 wins, Duke only allowed 7 points. That's pretty solid. Like, that's really solid. And I even tell you the teams it's against. Clemson, you only allowed 7. Lafayette, 42-7. Northwestern, you scored 38, but you allowed 14 points. UConn, on the road at UConn, by the way, you only allowed 7. Even in their losses, and you start to get to the back half of Duke's season, you have to remind yourself, Riley Leonard's not in the picture really for them at a consistent pace. Their loss against Notre Dame at home, which if you remember, that was a crazy, really, really good, tightly contested football game. They lost 21-14. NC State, an NC State team that, if you watch last night's live show, we're all of us are really high on. They only allowed 3 points. Even at Florida State, they allowed 38 points in a loss. That was without Riley Leonard towards the back end of that game. Louisville, they did get blanked. Once again, you're talking about a team that doesn't have its starting quarterback. Wake Forest, they allow 21 in a win. At Virginia, they allow 30 in a loss. Pitt, 19 points in a win. Troy at the end of the season, they only allowed 10. And then North Carolina is obviously the outlier. But if you're Georgia Tech and you're sitting here, you're looking at that, I think, like, truthfully, you look at the numbers that he was able to put together at Duke, and one, you ask yourself, why can't he do that here? Because arguably Tech should be bringing in better talent than Duke should be if it's all on a level of playing field. So I really, really like the addition of Tyler Santucci. I think that's a really, really fun bullet point just to kind of look at. Now let's look at another number here. I've got these written down here on a nice little Google sheet. Some more things about it. One of the 3 schools nationally with all 3 of their losses during the regular season coming against top 25 opponents. They were 5-0 when they allowed 20 or less points and 4-0 when allowing 10 or less points. What this is saying is Tyler Santucci is going to have a defense that is going to let your offense work. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about this. We talk about linebacker play and improved front 7. But when you move forward as a program and you kind of move into this sense of, okay, we hit with Buster Faulkner, he's staying, and now we get to kind of roll into 2024 with an offense we expect to be at least in the top 30, top 35 range. If we cut down on some of the mistakes, now you're talking about a top 25, top 20 group. If you can do that, and Santucci, I'm not talking about folks jumping into a top 40 defense. If you can just be a top 60 defense statistically, you're talking about a team that could easily get to 7, 8, 9 wins. And I think that is going to be massive in terms of program development. It's going to be massive in terms of where you want to go. In terms of your defense giving an identity. I mean, look, you have 2 guys that are really, really solid up-and-coming coordinators. And what you've got now in Buster Faulkner, and he's only going to continue to grow. And then also on the defensive side of things, you have Tyler Santucci, who seemed to be a rising star, and you poached him. He was kind of just a free agent hanging out there, and you absolutely did that. They ranked tied for 14th nationally. This is Duke, by the way, nationally and second in the ACC with 2 defensive touchdowns. And I just think, like, this is nuts. Tyler Santucci's year, okay? These are some of the jumps that he made as Duke's defensive coordinator. So go back to 2022. They were 98th in the country in red zone defense. Ref, I don't even know if I'm looking at this right. You might have to fact check some of this stuff. They jumped up. I had a plus 96 differential in this. It says they were ranked second. I don't even know if that's true. I'd love to see that. NCAA red zone defense 2023. If that's true, holy cow. Scoring defense. I think that's actually true. They only gave up an average of 15.67 points per game this past season. 31st in 2022, jumped all the way to a top 10 scoring defense in the country. Here's one for you that you'll absolutely love to see if you're a Georgia Tech fan. Defensive yards per play allowed. They gave up an average of 4.93 yards per play, which, look, in today's day and age of college football and just the sport where we're going, you're going to give up yards. They jumped 43 spots in the span of a year with Santucci at the helm, 63rd back in 2022, up to a top 20 there in 2023. And then total defense. They gave up 329 yards this past season. They were 67th in 2022. They jumped up 40 spots to number 27th in the country. Guys, this is the makings of an elite defensive coordinator. And when you look at what he was able to do at Duke, and I'll even give you just a couple more here, passing yards allowed. Holy cow, this is nuts. They gave up 179.3 yards passing per game last season. In 2022, Duke was ranked 104th in the country. 2023, they're ranked 15th, a plus 89 differential in that. This is what I'm saying with this. Look, they had some key players, and Georgia Tech's going to have to get better up front. We're going to have to see some guys develop. We're going to have to see some depth of these guys jump. But you were able to go and get a guy with elite coaching tendencies and numbers, and the resume speaks for itself. And I'll even add in the fact that you took him from a conference rival. You were able to poach him away and bring him somewhere else. This is a guy who's nationally respected in what he's doing. These numbers were at Duke, folks. And that's not a shot at the Duke football program, but we know historically what Duke has been. When you're talking about, and Ralph, am I correct in that the red zone defense jumped from 98th to second in the country? That's crazy. That's nuts. And so we get these conversations about, well, how good can this defense be? And that kind of leads us into that. And well, real quick, before we get to that, I want to talk about this because this is just another absolutely crazy thing. Duke this past season, and we talked about Georgia Tech, okay? We're going to get into some personnel things, and we're going to get into some stuff here in a second. Duke, last season, one of their strengths was explosive 30-plus yard plays. This is what we're limiting long plays. Georgia Tech struggled so much in that against everybody they played. They'd have glimpses. They'd have spots where they felt good about it. Duke only allowed up until this is, he was a nominee for the Rose Award. So up until kind of through 9 games, they had only allowed 30-plus, 8 plays of 30-plus yards, with the longest play being 61-yard pass against Wake Forest. And one of those plays is a kickoff return, which I'm not even putting on Tyler Santucci. So I just think that you have a guy that has elite tendencies, and he has he has the resume at a program that you should be better than, that you should be able to recruit better than. And so it brings the question of personnel. And that's where we all kind of sit on this. We all sit here and say to ourselves, okay, does Georgia Tech have the personnel to go and do this? That's going to be like this massive question that everybody wants to know the answer to. You look at defensively what they're going to have. You're going to bring back a guy like Sylvain Yanjuan. You're going to have Zeke Biggers. You're going to have Horace Lockett. Those two guys, I think, are the linchpin for this entire group. You're going to have the transfer Io there from Florida State. Can he be a big contributor immediately? Because if you can rotate in Biggers, Lockett, and Io, and I'm calling him Io because I knew a guy, Ralph, you remember Io, AYO, when you went to high school with us. Well, he was in middle school. We were in high school at the time. All of that being said, Tifasi, however you want to say it, Zeke, Horace, and Mr. Tifasi, if you can start rotating in 300-pounders along that front seven, guys, You're entering territory to where you're starting to build the championship level depth. And we're not going to get ahead. We're not going to sit here and say they're going to win the ACC. Look, a lot of things have to improve. You're asking a group to jump a magnificent amount of spots into historically bad into elite. He did it at Duke. Does Georgia Tech have that same personnel? I think that you've got guys that are going to have Tatum. You're going to have Eford. You're going to have some other names as well that you can use. Shameik Jones. I mean, look, there's going to be some absolutely have to be some development because Dr. Bob points it out here. This is the key here. Duke had a very, very veteran, nice, stable of front seven members. Dwayne Carter, RJ Oben, Jamian Franklin, and Nice Peebles. Like, you had some great guys. And Dr. Bob is exactly right. Like, they just flat out developed guys. That is where Tyler Santucci will jump into elite category because you were able to do that with what you wanted to in Durham. Can you bring it to Atlanta and do the same thing there? You're going to have to see a jump. I think they're going to try to hit this transfer portal window fairly aggressively. If they get out of spring ball, hear me here, if they get out of spring ball and they still don't maybe like what they have or they feel like they can add more, there's a guy that they know, there's a relationship that's going to jump in the portal, maybe they look there. I'm just here to tell you, you have a guy that has a track record. And, you go back to this, and if you want to, look at what he's done even before that, well, look, he worked with Mike Elko at Texas A&M, where they turned back in 2021. They turned, all the jokes about Jimbo. That defense was elite. Texas A&M was the number 3 scoring defense in the country that year in the SEC. And Mike Elko is a very, very well respected defensive head coach. This is that coaching tree that you really, really like to see. And Santucci said before the 2023 season, when he had the DC role, one of his quotes was, what is some of the monikers? What are some of the identity things that you want to sit here and play with? He goes, to get the ball back to the offense is the main goal. And if we can continue to do that and build upon that, that is one piece of it. We have to continue to play disruptive football and disrupt what they want to do. I'm just saying. I think this is a really good hire. Now, what are my expectations? I think that they, in terms of personnel, I think that they've got to improve that. I think that you've got some pieces to work with. This, in my opinion, is not the same group in terms of development and cohesiveness that Duke brought into last season. So do I expect them to jump into a top 25 nationally, defense? No, I don't think so. But I think if you can get into the top 60, the top 50 range, you're cooking. Like, you're absolutely cooking with what you want to do with this program. And you'd have to give credit to Brent Key for back-to-back years making elite hires in Buster Faulkner and in Tyler Santucci. So I think this is going to be very interesting to kind of see what happens just kind of going forward because, ladies and gentlemen, there's excitement on the flats, as there should be. Yeah, I've got them as a Tier 3 program. No reason that they can't be a Tier 2 program by the end of the 2024 campaign. And I think it's going to be very fun to watch that indeed. Got a couple comments here that Ralph starred, and let's get to them. Ralph, what we got here? Just a couple, I know, as we kind of wrap up the show. But that's kind of where I wanted to sit with that. I mean, like, how can he do it? Linebacker play's got to improve. Luke says, how do we feel about Jackson Hamilton? I think he's going to be a contributor. And to what extent, we're going to have to get a better feel for that in spring practice with some of the reports out of there and then into fall camp. Like, I think that's where you have to sit with that conversation. So, yeah. John Burns, can our defense improve 12 points per game? If so, we're in for a treat. That's a jump. And that's the hope, correct? Like, you go back to what they did at Duke, which is still just crazy. They went from 31st to 7th in scoring defense. Like, that is wild. That's wild. That's significant jumps, and that's elite type of jumps they were able to do. So, I don't know, man. It's crazy to see. Maxwell says, do you think with Santucci's ability to develop and our out-of-nowhere ability to force turnovers, we can potentially lead the nation turnovers and defensive scoring? Fun thought. Well, if you do that, Maxwell, if you lead the country in turnovers forced and defensive scoring, like if you led it in both those categories, you probably win a national title. Like, Ralph, is that a crazy thing to say? Like, if like, just put whatever logo you want on there. Like, if you have an average offense, but you were leading in scoring defense in the amount of times you turned it over, what does that tell me? You don't let people score, and you're getting your offense is getting more possessions than the other team. So even if you have like a top 50 offense, you're in the playoff. I think that's safe to say. You're in the college football playoff. Now, is Georgia Tech going to be there? I don't know. I mean, Tyler Santucci has prided himself on getting the ball away from other teams. They've done a good job of that. I think what you don't want to see is it revert back to where Georgia Tech has to be so reliant on that to even be able to stop teams. And we've seen that over the past couple of years. Like that's the only way that they've been able to stop teams really with any type of consistency is, oh gosh, we need an interception here. We need when, something else happens. Sorry, I meant when the defense scores. Oh, you're referring to, okay. I don't know. Good point though. Good point. I'll tell you this too. A couple more stats for you. And Gavin, okay. I want to mention this here. And yes, Matt's absolutely right. Make sure to hit that like button. You had the ACC's top scoring defense in Duke last year. He was a nominee for the 2023 Burroughs Award, which people don't know that honors college football's top assistant coach in the country. He was a nominee for that, which means the national recognition is there for him. But before he got to Duke, okay, he helped as co-DC in 2022. He had the number one pass defense in the country at A&M and a top 25 scoring defense. They also ranked top 10 nationally in red zone defense and top 20 interceptions and pass efficiency. And then his 3 total seasons, they only won 22 games in that stretch, but they won 9 and were ranked number 4 in the country back in 2020. Everywhere that you go, okay, and you look at kind of his file, like he has been really, really good. And I'll even mention this on this side of things. Obviously, a lot of people know that full-time I cover LSU. Talk with some people who have, crossed paths with him when he was on Brian Kelly's staff back in 2017 at Notre Dame as an analyst. They say, look, the guy's a rising star. Like he understands defense and he has a hunger for the game. And I think that's what's really exciting is this sense of hiring, not going the retread route, but the next big thing. And that's, I think, how you want to build your program if you're in the spot where Georgia Tech is. Now, a lot of these things we talked about with linebacker play is going to depend on the talent up front, okay? Can Kyle Pope make a massive change in that? He has been a guy that is, coached some all-American conference type of players. So that, for me, is going to be something where can you develop some of these guys on the outside to be that guy? Like, can you be that guy? And then, obviously, Jess Simpson's going to have to play massive role in this. And the associate head coach for the defense in 2023, I mentioned this when they made the hire with Santucci. Continuity is massive. And when you can bring continuity into a new situation, and you're like, so what does that mean? Okay, it's going to be a new situation for everyone, like for these players. But when you can bring messaging on the coaching side of things, that is going to help ease the transition immensely. And so I really, really like the fact that they brought in, Jess Simpson for that aspect. This is a guy who, look, in 2022, Duke's defensive front was first nationally in fumble recoveries, second in turnover margin, averaging almost 1.5 a game, plus 1.5, I should say. 9th in the country in takeaways. They were top 25 in sacks per game, averaging almost 3 sacks per game. Here's one, get excited about, folks. They only allowed 121.1 rushing yards per game, and that was top 4 in the ACC. If Georgia Tech can find a way to finish top 5 in the ACC in total defense or something like that, you're challenging for a spot in Charlotte. Like, I feel comfortable saying that. Now, the problem is it's a massive jump, and I need to see from a developmental standpoint some of these guys take a step up, and I need to see personally maybe even some more additions to what I think can be a good defense, but I think it's going to take a lot of the coaching to develop these guys and the jumps that these individual players have to make. So I really, really like this. And man, it's just good stuff. It's just really good stuff. Daniel Cofield says developing players is key since we cannot seem to get anything better than 3 stars out of high school. I'm guessing that's a question. Yeah, I mean, Daniel, look, I'd say this. If you start to develop, the more talented players are going to want to come. And that's where you are as a program like Georgia Tech. Like, you're a mid-tier program in terms of recruiting. You're not going to be one of the elite programs right now. You're not going to be a top 10 recruiting class. But to get out of the 40s and the 30s to jump into the 25s and the teens, you've got to develop some of that 3-star talent into all ACC type of players. Once you do that, You take that to the kid at Grayson High School. You take that to the kid at Buford, the Carrollton, the Mary Persons, the Valdosta, the Lowndes counties, and you sit here and say, okay, we took so-and-so out of Crisp County and put him, at the all ACC level. Imagine what we can do with you. And so now you kind of start to build the moniker of, okay, Georgia Tech's got place to come play defense. That's what you want Santucci to do. He has established that brand and been a part of that brand wherever he's been. And I think that's the excitement with it. So, yes, you want to recruit better. You have to recruit better in the long term, but it starts with winning on the field. And I think Santucci is going to be a big part of that in terms of program outlook and perspective outlook. It's a big if. Like, we got to see. Just because I say this, and I say this all the time, just because things have happened doesn't mean they will. And just because things don't happen doesn't mean they won't. Put that on a t-shirt. Let's go to Dr. Bob here. He goes, I think 2025 is setting up to be a pivotal year. If we can make a bowl of this return king for a 6th year and get to year 2 under Santucci, look out. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Albert Scott says they only have like 3 or 4 defensive tackles. Key needs to hit the portal hard on defense. I mean, look, you got to build some depth, but you also got to figure out what these young guys are made out of, because the lifespan of a college freshman on a roster, like the roster lifespan, is less than a year at this point. So if you don't figure out what you have, you kind of have to move forward with either we're going to keep this guy from a developmental standpoint or we're going to move forward. And so I think that's where you sit with that. Good show, though. Good show. Well, hey, we appreciate you tuning in. I think Tyler Santucci is a really, really good hire. And, we kind of outlined some of the things here tonight of why I think that, from a linebacker play, he has elevated that everywhere he has been. In terms of statistical, he has the resume that you want. And how's he going to do it? Well, the defensive line's got to develop. We know that. The linebacker play has got to be better. And that is going to help alleviate a secondary that doesn't have to take a physical beating every single game for 60, 70, 80 snaps. If you do that, you can jump into a top 60, top 50 defense. Maybe you challenge to go to Charlotte. Anything better to me would be cherry on top. But you need to see progress. And we are, a month away from spring ball at this point? Cannot wait to kind of see what the reports and the rumors are out of that, of how this group looks, and kind of get a feel for what Santucci is like in front of the media. Going to be a lot of fun. Ralph Leary's in the background. My name is Bryce Koon, and Dr. Bob hits it right there. You better like, you better comment, you better subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast feed, give us a follow over there, whether that's on Spotify, whether that's on Apple Podcasts. We do appreciate that. And if you're on YouTube, continue to grow the channel, share it with your friends. And, if you get a good comment, our friend Mr. Singh, he's not here with us tonight, but he's going to get a Crowded Booth gift card. So if you get a good comment in there, we would appreciate that as well. And you might even find yourself with some cool merch. You can find all those links down below in the description, whether you're listening or watching. We've got our merch, we've got our Discord, and we've got our website, www.crowdedbooth.com, where really you say, what is that, Bryce? You just go there. It's a newsletter. You can sign up and get everything that we do directly into your email inbox. And so you don't have to worry about trying to find us elsewhere. But if you want to, subscribe to this channel completely free and make sure to set up those notifications as well. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Going to be very massive. I'm excited to see what they can do. I think Santucci was a home run hire. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think he could lead you to one of the ACC's best defenses. Got a long way to go to get there. Not going to say it's happening in 2024, but we'll see. Ralph Leary's in the background. My name is Bryce Koon. We'll catch you next time. Swarm Talk here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.